Hello everyone, and thank you for joining our Boys to Men Foundation webinar on the future of work, 21st century careers. My name is Idigbe, and I'm the founder of Boys to Men Foundation. And our whole purpose is to support boys and men to become the best they can be and to contribute with integrity to their communities. So why did I set up Boys to Men Foundation? I think the assumption of privilege and entitlement lends to people not doing their best because they feel that society or the community will give them their place. Well, in the world we occupy today, nobody's place is very sure, and so it's important that everyone, male and female, work hard to achieve what they want to achieve. And so it's important that boys as well as girls are supported. A lot of organizations understandably support women to be the best they can be because we're trying to achieve some parity within the social structure. But it means that in a way, boys are falling through the cracks. And so Boys to Men Foundation was set up to ensure that boys and men also have the same support that women get. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of work, 21st century careers. A lot of young people today prefer to do what they want to do, to follow their passions, their talents, and to work hard to achieve what they want to achieve. And that has become the way forward for careers. So what are those careers? What are some of the things the young people do? We have on our panel a number of young people, each of whom is following their own hearts, following their own careers, their career paths. And so I'd like to hand over to them, to the moderator, Oseloka, to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, solid. Sorry, my volume went out for a second, so I had to restart my computer. All right, great. So, guys, welcome. Going to have a bit of a chat today. Sort of as we sort of think about today, the real focus of our conversation is going to be on non-traditional careers in the 21st century, right? So, we're really going to hear from a few good men in the room here. About their different experiences, how they think about success, what really influenced their thinking about success, and then really going to dive into career choices, right? So, what made you decide to go down this path? We have filmmakers, we have artists here, we have chefs, creative directors, right? So again, I'm going to give folks a bit of time to introduce themselves before we get started. But before that, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Oseloka Idigbe. And this is I'm doing this panel discussion today. Really excited to do it. I am not a creative. I am merely a strategic consultant and coach. So the floor will not be all mine today. So I'm really going to be moderating the conversation, asking a couple of questions, digging deeper as I can when I can. But really, the stage is for you all here. So with that, I'm going to just pass over. Maybe I'll start with you, Ochuko. Maybe if you just introduce yourself. And then we'll go around and then we'll jump into some questions.
Thanks, Osi. My name is Ochuko Esiri. I am a filmmaker, writer, director, but more with a leaning towards writing.
Great, thanks, Ochuko. Anyone else can step forward?
Yeah. Yo, what's up, everybody? TeeZee, aka Teni Zaccheaus. Creative entrepreneur, co-founder of Native Magazine and an artist for BRB, one of the pioneering members of the alter community in Nigeria today.
I'm Arie. I'm Ochuko's twin brother, coincidentally. Also a filmmaker, writer, director. And yeah, that's it really. I lean more towards directing, Ochuko more towards the writing, but we work together on our movies.
Awesome, thanks, Arie.
Hi, I'm chef. My name is Benedict, also known as Chef Benedict. I'm an Italian chef based in Lagos.
Hi everyone, my name is Yasser, Claud-Ennin. I am an artist, visual artist, and I also do creative direction in terms of branding and product design. That's it.
Thanks, Yasser. All right, great. So I think everyone's had a chance to introduce themselves here. So I'm going to jump right in. And so for folks who are watching, this is going to last, let's say about an hour and a half. We're going to be talking. So for the first hour or so, I'll just be directing some questions to folks on the panel here. And then after that, we're going to have some open questions, right? So please feel free to use the chat as much as you like. If there's things that you hear that you sort of resonate with, hey, put it in the chat. If you have questions, just put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them, as you think about the questions. So if we're not answering the questions right as you ask them, bear with us, but we'll definitely try to get to as many questions as we can, right? So again, want to make it as interactive as possible. This is going to be a conversation. And again, please put as many questions in the chat as you want, respond, chat, and really keep the energy going as we go through the conversation. So guys, we're going to really be talking about, non-traditional careers, right? Traditions in the creative field specifically today. And, before we get to that, really want to just take a moment and really reflect on how we got here, right? And so the first thing I really want to ask you all is, as you sort of think about growing up and the different ways in which success can be defined, what was that way that you defined success when you were growing up? And also, what were some of the key influences that helped you define success in that way? Maybe I'll start off with Ochuko, and then, please everyone just jump in.
Right. I think growing up, the notions of success, my notion of success anyway, was very much built around around my environment and what I witnessed. So in that respect, it was rooted in material things, because as a young man, as a youth, you recognize your parents put food on the table, your parents have a house, your parents have a car. And there's a direct correlation between my parents working and earning and being able to afford these things. And at that point in life, the purpose is to sort of emulate what you've seen around you. You want to own your own house, you want to own your own car, you want to be able to send your kids to good schools. And the thing that the one common denominator of all of that stuff was being materially, was earning and being secure. And so that was my idea. It was about earning enough money to be able to afford the things that one felt they needed or one felt took precedent in their lives.
Awesome, thanks, Ochuko. So really what you're sharing there is that the environment that you saw, right? You were really living and you saw that, hey, what does success look like? It looks like houses. It looks like cars, right? It looks like material things, right? And so as a sort of a young person growing up, you're thinking, wow, I want to strive to that level of success, right? But of course, that's a fairly narrow definition of success, right? Other folks, how did you define success?
So, I think I agree with Chuko. Success was defined really by immediate environments, reflections of seeing what our parents did, what our aunties and uncles did, what we were told was defined as success in school, growing up in a community that was really based and focused around financial stability or exponential wealth was really what was seen as success, especially in Nigeria, where, that's kind of what the whole community was kind of based around. So, growing up, you always think that, I need to blow, I need to be super rich to be happy and successful. So I think, it was very similar in terms of that for me.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Teni. And one thing you mentioned there was school, right? And when I think about school and I think about growing up and thinking about success, school was definitely a very big part of that, And so even I remember, in summer holidays, Easter holidays, whatever it was, I just spent 3 months in school to come back home and then of course have lessons, right? Because that is what's driving my success, right? So again, really thinking about that, drilling down, hey, you've got to be good at maths, you've got to be good at English. How do you think about moving forward if you don't have those things, right? Right. So thanks for that, right? Thanks for really bringing that school piece in, because again, it really does color it. Arie, maybe I want to invite you in. It looked like you were about to unmute.
No, I was gonna add to what Ochuko said with what you just said, which was that grades were an important part of my understanding of success. Success in school meant that you would get the job that would provide you those things, the material things that Chuko mentioned. But yeah, I was just going to add that to that, because I think that was a very important part of what shaped our understanding of what would eventually get us to these things, you know. And so that pressure in school to get those grades, you know, just meant you could be a banker or a lawyer or all the other things you saw your aunties and uncles were and you understood that those jobs or those professions provided them the lifestyle that you were told was a successful one.
Awesome. Thanks, Arie. Yasser, Benedict, anything you want to add?
I'd say that apart from the financial value, obviously, which helps, the notion of success, like, I'd say the other aspect of success I kind of witnessed was basically, or essentially a freedom of just being or achieving various things, like what you can do, or what you're free to do, having achieved certain things. So it's like, okay, like Chuko and I have also mentioned, like having that monetary value or whatever linked to success, you can allows you a certain privilege to do certain things, and that's something I witnessed. But then apart from that is also, I guess the notion of being happy and content, I think contributes to success as well.
Right. Thanks, Yasser. So Benedict, I think you were about to jump in, but I think Yasser might have jumped in first. So I think you're still on mute, sir. You're still on mute.
Yeah, sorry guys. So basically what I was saying, I'll narrow it, like everybody's more or less touched on everything, but I'll say, yeah. So I'll say title, that's like your job description, obviously. Finances, and also just fulfilling whatever pedigree or like whatever social background you come from. You know, like a lot of people are like, oh, my uncles are bankers, this one and that one here, and they go, so ideally they feel that that's where you should fit in. And, you know, you have to be making the same money your uncles and dads and everything what people are making, and it has to be. So it's finances, fulfilling pedigree, and job description and job title, to be honest. I'll just narrow it down to those three. I think everybody has been quite elaborate when it comes to that.
Right, you know, and actually, you know, Benedict, it's really interesting that you bring in that idea of job title, right? Because job title is something that certainly to me seems like it follows the natural path of a traditional career, right? Because when we're saying, hey, chief executive officer, right? CEO, COO, right? When I'm thinking about those things, I might be thinking about, hey, that's a bank. Hey, that's a law firm. You know what I mean? And so again, right, positionally, the things that give us those titles, chief, right, are the things that actually sort of seem more traditional and more sort of run-of-the-mill in that way, right? And so, you know, what's really interesting about that is that, you know, we've all shared that, hey, you know what, success was defined fairly narrowly, right? It was about material things, potentially, right? It was about being good in school. It was about following the right course, the right path. But crucially, the right course and the right path, right? It sounds like are things that were not determined by us, right? Not determined by the individual. And so as I sort of push through that, you know, the next question for me is, right, what's changed, right? How are you defining success now, right? As you sort of grow up and as you sort of, hey, we're all adults here. What does that look like for you now? How are you thinking about success, and how is it different maybe from how you thought about it growing up? I'll give that one to anyone. I can call on you if you want, but I invite you to jump in.
Well, sorry, can I jump in? Okay.
Please do.
Sorry?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, okay. So basically how, I think success now, to be honest, is having, at least the way I view it, is having a certain freedom and peace. You know, the ability to choose what you want to do and pursue it as far as possible. And just be satisfied with whatever it is you've accomplished. You know, I do believe that, yes, finances do play a part in whatever level of success you're trying to achieve, because finances tend to facilitate whatever it is that you're trying to do, especially in a country like this. You know, when you're broke, it's a little bit more difficult to do things. But the truth is that I think that that is not really the premise, or that is not what everybody is trying to really. Obviously, everybody wants to make back, you know. But the truth is, I think right now what we're all trying to look for is, I really want to explore this as much as possible. That freedom of knowing that this is what I chose to do, I saw it through. I took it to a certain point, and I'm satisfied. So yeah.
And is, you know, that piece about choice, right? That piece about choice. This is what I chose to do. There is a satisfaction, right, in pursuing that passion, right, that dream. Ochuko, I just cut you off.
In a way to add on that, with the freedom to choose. I think personally, what happened to me was I got to the point where I learned the difference between purpose and success, and so very much my idea of success is, am I fulfilled in what I'm doing? And it's quite personal in that way. But for me, it's about getting up every day and trying to be the best filmmaker I can be, the best writer I can be. And if I can look at my work, look at myself in the mirror, and say that I gave that particular project my all, or more than that, that I can actually share this particular project with people and feel that I've achieved something. To me, that's really where the success is. It's so deeply rooted in the work. Is the work good? Do I have an ability? Do I have the chance to be like the people that I admire in this field? Am I getting there? That's where success is for me.
Right. So again, now what we're doing here is we're saying, you know, there's an idea of, you know, success as a very traditional sort of thing, but actually what you're sharing here is success as following your purpose, right? So thinking, what is my purpose and how do I follow that, right? And the important thing about that is that it doesn't necessarily need to make a distinction between a traditional or a non-traditional career, right? Because again, if you're thinking about it, if we're following our purposes, whatever career that leads you down, right? Then again, that now looks a bit more like success, which actually looks a bit broader, right, than a narrow definition of, hey, there's a couple of key fields. Hey, what are you going to study, right? So that's really, really great to share that, Ochuko. Arie, I think you're about to jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to add that for me, of course, fulfillment is a huge part of feeling successful in what you're doing. But I think, at least for me, the industry that I'm in, there is an element of having a certain amount of societal impact. And I think part of that is because sort of the landscape or the infrastructure for the type of things I want to do doesn't really exist. It's not, these opportunities are not readily available. And I think there is a certain amount of like carving out your own space within a society that doesn't quite have the type of industry that I would like to see, or that I think I can thrive in. So for me, in addition to that, there is a certain amount of societal impact that concerns me as far as thinking of how successful I am in what I'm doing. And I mean, part of that as well is the people that are in the industry alongside with me, and those that are supposed to be coming after. You know, I mean, like for example, we don't really, you know, our main film school, there's just one, but it's you know, dilapidated, very rundown system, and there are a few people that are able to be in Nigeria and decide that they want to train in whatever aspect of filmmaking, whatever aspect of filmmaking they might be interested in. When you look at the broad range of jobs available to you on set or on any given set. So yeah, I'm very conscious of my environment when I'm thinking about like what does success look like.
Right. So I mean, so what I'm hearing there actually is that you know, you might be able to define that success. You might be able to think about that purpose in some instances, right? And with the example you gave about film school, you know, part of what it is that, hey, if I wanted that to be my success, right, the avenues to explore that deeper may not be as readily available as, say, the avenues for a traditional career, right? Is that right?
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any?
I was going to say, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I think for me, the idea of the definition of success is not necessarily set in stone. It's basically like a goal that continues to shift, if you see what I mean. So at various points in your life, obviously, you come across very different career milestones. And at each point in time, I think you will cross that threshold of like, okay, fine, I said I was going to do this 5 years ago, and then I've met that goal. So I think it's one that actually shifts from time to time. But in the grand scheme of things, like Benedict and everyone else has said, like money is obviously a very important factor. So you have to say, okay, fine, is what I'm doing, apart from the fact that it is my passion, something that I've chosen to do, something that I've said I'm going to put all my intentions and my heart into, is that going to put food on the table? Is that going to keep me shielded from the elements? That sort of thing. But at the end of the day, as Arie had just also mentioned, like, is what I'm doing now, being in the creative sphere, non-traditional career, is it good enough to inspire someone else? Is it good enough to impact change in others? And at the end of the day, success itself is also down to perspective. Being in the various career paths that we're all in, other people or other people that have had more experience and know-how than you do might not deem you as successful as they are. And other people coming up behind you in the industry might see you as very successful and hold you on a pedestal. But there you are thinking to yourself, I've not done enough this year. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like, I remember when all I wanted to do was have an exhibition by the time I was 30. And then halfway through the end of last year, I was like, it would be cool to be on a panel discussion. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and then started this year, had a panel discussion, and then COVID happened. I'm like, oh, great, no more panel discussions. And then now, here I am on a Zoom call. So there are various aspects to, I guess, what you define as success and how the goal shifts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. But again, there's an element of, hey, I can choose this, right? So success for me doesn't have to be the way other people are defining it, right? So I'm hearing a couple of different things here, right? So I'm hearing purpose, right? That purpose might drive me to be happy, right? But I'm also hearing that success for me might be achieving a goal that I set. And that goal that I set might be, hey, in 5 years, I want to have my own exhibition, right? And achieving that, right, in that way is success. And that's a very sort of great distinction here, because I know that where we've talked about sort of success from that, I mean, starting this conversation was, hey, material, financial, right? But actually the way you've just described success, and I think the way we're moving into this, right, is actually, hey, I set goals and I achieve them. That's success, right? I move forward, I'm making progress, right? So again, there doesn't have to be this external milestone. It can actually be something that I deem, I create, and I can really follow in that way. Awesome. All right, so I guess as we're sort of thinking about that, right? So we've sort of traveled along and we've talked about, hey, success can be very narrowly defined. But of course, we can expand that up as we sort of make it a bit more personal, think about setting goals, thinking about our own individual happiness, right? And so with all those things, right, you know, it's still difficult, right, to enter into a non-traditional career, right? So Arie, you talked about, you know, not having necessarily the same type of infrastructure in non-traditional fields as traditional fields, right? And so to bring that maybe to light a bit more, so, hey, if I wanted to be a lawyer, there are many internships that I could probably try out to test it out to see if I liked it, right? If I wanted to work in a bank, similar, right? But again, in a creative field, those things may not exist as well. So there's a couple of barriers to success as we sort of think about that. But pushing that forward, the big question here is, okay, so with all that in mind, how and when really did you decide that actually I'm going to follow my own path, I'm going to follow my own purpose, and I'm going to define success for myself? When was it that you really realized that, hey, you know what? I'm going down a different path, the sort of the path less traveled, right? What were the key influences that really made you push for that? So maybe I'll jump to you, Teni.
This is an interesting question. So I would say it was definitely something I knew that I wanted to do, and I was eventually going to do since for a very long time. I would say maybe first year of secondary school. I just knew like that was what suited me best. That was where my interest was. That's really where my head was at. But obviously the impact of your community at the time is still, you know, you're in and out of it because, you know, I was making music, like, you know, you're rapping, you're, you know, making crews, you're doing parties, doing events. But at the same time, it's like, can it really work? Because there's no, like, you don't really see many success stories from your environment who are doing what you think is possible. You're seeing it from, you know, being that young kid who's imagining things. Like you're seeing MTV, Channel O, and you're thinking, oh, how can I create this world? But I've never seen that world where I'm from. So, you know, that was something that was always like juxtaposing for me. And throughout education, I was kind of always sitting on the fence. I was always doing it, but at the same time, I was still like in uni, still going to school, still trying to get like a traditional career, even though I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I feel like the switch really happened once I graduated. Once I graduated university, and I was like, you know what? There's nothing else I can do that I will feel personally that I will create impact for the next generation of kids who are going to look up to someone from our world and be like, this TeeZee guy, I know his auntie, I know his mom, I went to the same high school with them. How did they do that? You know, so that was my mission, was like, I need to leave an impact so the kids coming up after me can be like, yo, okay, this guy was like me. So how did he manage to step out of the traditional way of doing things and kind of facilitate a new way of thinking? And it was very difficult. I'm not going to sit down here and be like, you know, there was a few people who, you know, went head first in and managed to, you know, come out the other side as champions. And some people didn't make it at all. So it was a scary decision to make. But, you know, at the end of the day, I was just very confident in the fact that doing what I felt would leave an impact rather than just following suit of a line of history and tradition was definitely not for me. So, you know, I just kind of just switched my head on and said, you know, I just have to do it. And if it works out, cool. And if it doesn't, we'll go back to the drawing board.
At least you tried, right? At least you tried, right? And I think, you know, one thing that I want to pull up that you're saying here is actually, you know, it was a difficult path, but it was still an intentional choice. Yeah. Because actually what you're saying is you're trying to create a situation where the folks who are coming behind you have something to look up to and actually say, yes, I can in fact achieve that. And actually that can be success as well, right? So really great. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. And others, who wants to jump in on this one? Who's thinking something? Ochuko, looks like you're about to unmute, mate.
Yeah, I think that's great that Teni actually knew so early that was the direction he was going in. For me, it took a while to find where I wanted to be in this space. And the first time I actually thought, oh, I do want to be involved in a creative sphere was when I was sort of like 13, 14. And we had a film, and the film came with like it came with a leaflet that described how the actor prepared for the role. And at that point I thought, that sounds like a job I could do. Like that would be fun. And then I got to my last year at high school and I didn't know what I was going to apply for university. And my drama teacher said I should apply to drama school. So I went back and told that to the parents, and I was advised to do something else. So I was very much heading down that road. But like Teni, when I got to the end of graduation, to the end of law school, I was very much faced with two options, which was continue down this road of heading into legal work, or give this thing you've been thinking about all this time a shot. And I took the other path, and I thought I'd give it a go. And as Teni said, really, it was about I want to be able to look at look at myself in the mirror and say, I tried, and no regrets. I tried. But the more I got involved in it, the more I fell in love with it. I found my space in it, and just haven't turned back. I haven't turned back since.
Benedict, I'm gonna pull you in.
Hello?
Got you, we can hear you.
Yeah, so, no, it's, to be honest, I think everybody's kind of shared a similar experience, the rents, when you kind of present this to them, you're kindly advised to review your life plans, maybe there was something you didn't read between the lines. But no, to be honest, I had, the funny thing is, we all, I guess, knew from a young age what it is we wanted to do. But now deciding that you're going to do that, there's a push that needs to come, whether it's that you're fed up with all the other nonsense because you just literally can't find your place and all of that, you know what I mean? I can say that, funny enough, in my own case, it actually came from my mom, It's actually hilarious. I was not the best child. A bit of a problem child. But anyway, what it was I was supposed to go for like NYSC, and I hadn't lived in Nigeria. So to be honest, there's quite a bit of fear. I was like, dude, like I've already seen people like taking bath in buckets, like I'm not ready for that life and all of that. So I just got pushed to go to culinary school because my mom noticed that I had a passion for it. So, but I don't think they ever thought it was going to be like my career. I think it was more like, do this so you can actually just be like doing something, But I have to say, like, I think after 1 week of culinary school, I realized that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, So yeah, that's how I started for it.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing. Yasser, Arie, anything you want to add? So again, we're talking about when was that first moment that you were like, you know what? Yep, I'm going to follow this path. I'm going to follow this path.
Yeah, I think mine. I think I've known for a while that I was a creative person, but the decision to pursue a career as a creative came, I think, much later. Mine was more like towards the end of high school. My aunt was sort of helping me decide what I was going to do, because I was a bit of a left and right brain kid. So my A levels were half languages and half sciences, and I was just sort of like struggling to decide which one I was going to do, because you couldn't really do biology and chemistry at university or whatever, especially in the UK. It's a very specialized educational system. And so I was leaning more towards the sciences because I think that's what made sense in the environment that I grew up in as well. Thinking that I'd eventually go back to Nigeria and stuff, and it's like, of what use is French or Spanish there? But what she did that really helped me understand that wasn't the path for me was really painted the picture of what life as a biochemist would be. She was a doctor, and she knew me very well. I'd been living with her for 2 years, and she was just very she just went into a lot of detail about what the life what my life would entail if I went down the various routes that I was looking at. And yeah, it was very simple. I just wasn't going to spend the rest of my life in the lab, and she handed me a bunch of short courses, and I just went through those pretty religiously, day after day, until I found photography. But I still had to go and do a degree, so I chose, business and French, which was something that was something I felt would allow me a certain amount of creativity, or at least a little bit of wiggle room to figure things out. I think I'd seen my dad. My dad was an entrepreneur, so he didn't have he wasn't like, he didn't have like a fixed profession, so to speak. So I'd seen someone be in a field that allowed him to be creative in whatever it was, whatever business he was trying to start up, or just having that flexibility of time as well. He wasn't like a straight 9 to 5 and you come back at a certain time. Work seemed to always kind of be happening, was a lot more fluid, and that was something that I think appealed to me. So yeah, I think it was just that. I think I had to be given the freedom to think that I could do other things to allow me to get to where I am now. So it really was a question of trial and error, and really thinking through where in the creative space I felt my various talents, where I could land with my various talents in the creative space. But yeah.
Oh, awesome. So, so it really sounds like there's sort of two real important things there, right? So there are the influences, that is the things that you see, right? So again, you named, hey, I saw my dad sort of doing different things, right? So that opened up that avenue for me, right? Of course, I know your dad as well, so I also know he paints, right? So again, there's different things like that might be the influences, right? So there's the things that you see that might influence, hey, maybe I can do this. And then also the other thing that you mentioned was there were conversations that you had, right? I think it's really important to emphasize that, right? We had a question in the chat around, hey, who were the mentors? What were those key things that happened? And as I sort of hear you talking, Arie, I'm really hearing that, hey, that conversation about, hey, do you really know what it looks like to be a biologist or biochemist, right? Do you really want to sit in a white coat and sit in a lab for 10 hours a day? Do you know what I mean? Like, so again, those types of things helped you come to your own realization, gave you that critical thinking to say, you know what, maybe not. And then, of course, the idea of seeing someone who you look up to, someone who you admire, sort of following different pursuits, also then galvanized and pushed you forward to say, hey, you know what, actually, this is something that I can, and this is something that I should pursue. So,
right.
Thanks for sharing that, Arie. Yasser, just want to give you a minute to just share if you have anything that you want to add.
Okay, and the question is still...
The question is still, when is that first time that you realized, hey, you know what, this is something that I want to pursue, this is something that I can pursue?
Right.
Critically, what were some of your influences as you were sort of making that decision?
Okay, for me, I always knew from a young age I wanted to be a creative. I wanted to be in a creative space. So, for example, like from when I was leaving secondary school, I remember saying that if I couldn't be an artist, I wanted to be an architect or a chef, because hearing from a young age, like, oh my God, artists don't make money, this and that, and that sort of thing. I just wanted to be in a creative space, and it grew from that to wanting to do music, to wanting to be in theater or act and various other things. But when the time came and then I went to uni and stuff, I made sure I chose a degree that will be able to allow me to be creative and also apply for jobs in the creative field, basically. And that being said, I've always done art alongside of everything else that I've done in terms of school to jobs. So that's always happened. And even when I was changing jobs, it meant that I was always trying to fill this void of being in a 9 to 5, but then also like making sure I was doing something creative as well. So that was I guess pro and con situation. I wasn't necessarily feeling fulfilled, but then I was comfortable because I was creative. And then the plus side, it allowed me to develop certain skill sets that I don't think very many artists have. Like I can switch from traditional arts to graphic design to creative direction, photography, and those kind of things. But having said that, I wanted to go into art full time was when I said I can't keep being in this 9-to-5 job. And at the same time, it makes more sense for me to leave it now because I'm trying to match my pay with what I'm getting in the arts. And the 9-to-5 wasn't necessarily allowing me to do things like prepare for exhibitions, go and see clients and that sort of thing. So it had to be one or the other. But all along, I always felt like I wanted to do this. So I guess I was just picking up little trinkets and connecting the dots along the way to just be in the position that I'm in now.
Yeah, awesome. What I'm really getting from that, right, is that it sounds like there was a bit of contingency plan there, right? I think that the creative vibes were alive and kicking. But again, you wanted to make sure that, hey, I'm going to go and study something that can channel those creative vibes, right?
Yeah,
lead to that 9-to-5, right? And then what's really interesting about it is that as you were in that 9-to-5, it was, the idea sounded like it was, hey, art on the side, right? Art on the side. I'll follow my passion on the side. The more you got into it, the more there was a realization that actually, it's actually really hard work, right? So we think about traditional careers and non-traditional careers, and sometimes I think there's an idea of, hey, what level of work is required, right? But actually, what you've just described is that it's a commitment as much as, if not more than, right, a traditional 9-to-5, right? And that was a key decision point for you. Yeah. Were you about to share something? I don't know.
No, that's pretty much it, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So, that sounds really good, right? And, one thing that I want to sort of really push for us here is, so we've made those decisions. We figured out, hey, this is when we realized, but, what were the first steps that you took, right? So really interesting here as we sort of think about, non-traditional fields or being in the creative field, right? We talked, Arie, again, you talked about, hey, the infrastructures weren't there, right? I wasn't able to sort of latch onto it as easily as I may be able to latch onto something else. So for you all, what were those key steps that you actually took, right? To actually say, you know what, I'm doing this, right? And that was like that point of total commitment. What did that look like? What were those key steps that you actually took from actually saying, hey, I want to do this, to actually saying from vision to reality? Like, what does this look like? What were the key steps that you took in order to make it work? I will let everyone jump in. I mean, I have all your names. I but I want you to.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
So what were the key steps that you actually took? So we've talked about, hey, this is what I want to do. But actually, when was that decision actually made? And what were the first couple of things that you did in order to turn that vision into a reality?
I mean, my story is a bit more complex. I don't think it was as straightforward as that, because like I said, I was in a collective in A-levels and high school. So essentially, then I knew that this was what I wanted to do. We used to do like shows, youth focus shows for young artists who didn't have the opportunity to do stuff. But at the same time, we were still in school, in the school system. So I think at that point, we knew, but everyone was still going through that traditional path, even though you knew, because you felt like there were some checkpoints that you had to do for it to even be back. Because at the end of the day, I came from a background where my mom was a former banker who then moved into the event space. So when I saw that kind of shift she had a teenage kid and she made those kind of changes, I'm like, okay, so you can do this thing at any age. So me, I'm still balancing the act of like, cool, then I can see you can finish the school thing while you're still doing the other stuff. But I think it was really when I moved back to Nigeria after a stint in the UK. I moved back to Nigeria and I was like, okay, now with all the things I learned from, growing up in Nigeria, going abroad and seeing how things were done there, the combination of those two things was really what pushed me over the line to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. For NYC, when people were, serving and doing all that stuff, I served in a record label because I knew like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to study. When I studied in university, I hope any of my aunties or my mom is not on this. I just picked any course because I was like, this is a means to an end. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an engineer. That's why I did social sciences, so like social policy, psychology, just because I had to go to uni at the time. But you know, some other people decide that, you know what, I don't want to go to uni. This is what I want to do from, you know, straight out of high school. And they made that decision and it paid them off in the right way. So what I'm saying is that it wasn't as clear cut. I always knew that's what I wanted to do, but in terms of making that decision to stop everything else and just focus on the creative side, it didn't really kick in until I moved back. And like I told you, Oseloka, when we were speaking the other day, even when I did do the internship at the record label, I was doing that, I was making music, I was still doing the events, doing the shows, and I had a little situation where at a point I wasn't making any money and I was still in that society where it's like, the pressure is there. And I broke and I was like, damn, maybe I should try what everybody's saying makes sense. And I was doing oil and gas trading for 6 months. I'd never studied engineering. I'd never been to an oil and gas factory. But you know, that's just the hustle and bustle of Nigeria. At the time, oil prices were at a sky high. So just like, that's what makes sense to do if you don't have a, you know, there was no trajectory of what you were trying to accomplish, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was for me personally, I don't know anyone else, so it was kind of confusing. I kind of dabbled in both until I kind of moved back to Nigeria.
Yeah. But what you said is really interesting here, right? So it actually sounds like, hey, you acquiesced and you were like, you know what? Yep, I'm going to follow this traditional path. Fine, you know. And can you describe to me that feeling, right, of actually following that path, but knowing your purpose was different? Like,
yeah.
what was the feeling, right?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like going to prison. It was one of the lowest moments of, I'm gonna say my life, it sounds so dramatic. It was a really low moment for me because I was one of those people who I stood for, you know, the rebellion against like, do what you want, you know, fight for what's right. But when I came back, I was like in a space where I was the only one. There was no support. There was no one to really look up to. And you know, the juxtaposition of like people from our background and what we were doing, there were not many faces like us in the worlds we wanted to operate in. So the people in those worlds feel like, I can't take this person that seriously because they're not like us, even though you share the same passions, you know, you have the same interests, you've built up the same ecosystem as them, maybe even a more complicated and a better ecosystem. But there was always that complex of, these ones I went to, you know, you studied in London or you did this or you did that. You cannot be a musician. You cannot be a creative. You cannot be an artist. You can't be a film director. You know what I mean? So those challenges were very detrimental to like a young person where there was no one person I could be like, I need one mentor who can even talk to me and like get me out of this or give you that self-belief that you're on the right path. So at just a low moment, I was like, let me just try something else. And that's the beauty of being young is like, I knew that oil and gas was a means to an end. I said, let me just try it. I haven't done it. I've been in the studio for 2 years straight, shit. So let me just try it. And I tried it and I said, you know, I found out that I knew for sure then that wasn't for me. Yeah. And that moment on, it was streamlined to strictly being on that creative path. But the thing is, the small skills that you learn from that small 5-6 months in the oil and gas company of like just being in a business and applying those business elements to with the creative aspects that I'd been pushing for about a decade prior to that, really then took me and my business to the next level as soon as I got out of that situation. So even though I did do that, I feel like it did make sense for where I'm eventually sitting today as like, you know, someone that's trying to create their own version of MTV or Cartoon Network and like actually create that ecosystem that has kids dreaming and seeing festivals in Nigeria or like different types of, you know, just really changing the way people can think about stuff. So
yeah. So that's really great, you know. I mean, but again, sounds like, you know, tough decision points, right? Again, tough and actually being pushed all the way to the brink, right, in pursuit of something that actually wasn't the purpose that you had, right? We actually have a question here in the chat, right? And someone says, I would like to know, I'd like to know how to help a child who doesn't like mainstream school but wants to be a chef. But as a mother, I want him to finish his university education, right? So that's one of the questions that we have here, right? And I'm just wondering to you all in the panel, right? What does that look like? What is supporting someone who doesn't want that sort of traditional path, look like, even if that conflicts with your idea of, hey, I actually have an idea for you, I have a plan for you, right? What is that? What advice would you give to a parent who's actually saying, my child wants to do something else, but I want them to go to university. So what's that conversation? Maybe what would you advise a parent to say, or what conversation would you advise a parent to have with that child? Right? I'll open that up to anyone. Benedict. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I feel what should happen, the parents should be supportive, yes, but based on also how I saw, for example, how both my mom spoke to me and their aunt spoke to them, there should always be a level of advice of telling them, listen, this is what you're going to get yourself into. I'd recommend that the parents try and get them to talk to someone that's already within the industry so that they just know what they're getting themselves into. Another thing is, I would, funnily enough, I would get the parent to advise them to still stick to a little bit more structured education, just so that they can apply these things to what it is that they're trying to get themselves into. Because the truth is, it is a business in the end. We're all passionate about what we do, but the bottom line about what we're doing, although passion-driven, is a business. So you do need to have some sort of experience other than what it is that you just want to do.
Yeah. You wanna go ahead, Ochuko?
Yeah, sure. I would say the parents should, obviously parents, it all comes from a place of love, and they want to make sure that their child will be able to take care of themselves and fend for themselves in the world when they are no longer there to do it for them. So I think it would be, I think the parents should again encourage children to at least try what it is, because you might think you want to be a writer. So go speak to a writer, go ask them what their day-to-day is. And we live in a wonderful age now where that information is actually readily available to you on the internet. Definitely, but I completely agree with Benedict. I think if you're still in school, and if I would advise continuing down that line, because the thing we forget about education and what it really teaches you is critical thinking. That's the point of education, is to learn how to think through and around problems, which is something that's going to be valuable to you no matter what you do. And also it's a disciplined structure. Like there is, as a creative, you need more discipline as a creative than you do as someone that works in a traditional field, because there is no office to check into. There is no, you're on your own. Everything that gets made comes from you. And I think sticking in a disciplined environment sort of drills that into you, the idea of, like Yasser said earlier on, having goals, achieving goals, and learning how to think around and think through problems. So I would definitely advise, like, education is very important, not in so much as because the piece of paper you get at the end of it is valuable, but because you as an individual have an opportunity to learn and take skills away from it that you can apply in the thing that makes you fulfilled and passionate. But overall, get the child to have some contact with real world experience of what it is they think they want to do, because sometimes that it becomes very different, or rather the image you have in your head is very different to what it is in reality.
Yeah. What I would say is a vested interest in whatever that child is saying that they want to do, because more often than not, if kids at 16 is saying that, okay, I want to be a tennis player, or or a chef. I mean, from that moment on, if you're that serious about it, and as Nigerian parents are very challenging, and they want to inspire you, and I see then going to cooking competitions, start challenging yourself down that route to actually see whether that's what you want to do, whether that's the level of competition you want to acquire. If it's sports, whether it's music, like now there are different ways that you can go to higher education and not have to study one of the traditional things. You can go and study music engineering, you can study music business management, you can study you know, you can study almost anything. If it's even down the sports route, they're now like schools that are tailored to that. So you're actually challenging yourself at the highest level with competition and people who are doing the same thing as you. So you then realize that, oh, even if that's what you want to do, that's not traditional, and it's in the creative space or in the, you know, in the non-traditional space, it's still going to be hard work, and it's not going to be as straightforward as, you know, as straightforward as you would assume it to be if you were doing something else. So I think just that vested interest in, you know, challenging that kid, like, okay, oh, you want to be a chef? Cool. Let's start, you know, saying every Sunday you start making food for people. You start going to those food competitions. You're actually watching that. Is it actually an interest, or is it something you're just saying you like doing? Because there's a big juxtaposition, there's a big difference in those two things. So I think, yeah, just having that interest, because what I felt in, I mean, more so in our time when we were growing up, is that, you know, our parents were not, they were from an older generation, so they weren't really allowed to necessarily, how do I say this, think outside the box that they knew. But I feel like now, kids today, your parents are more open-minded about those things. They've seen more success stories from their own community and their own friends, kids who have grown up, so you can be more, they can try different avenues to see what could work out. I feel like always just pushing them and trying and see how far they're really willing to go to what they're saying they want to do.
Just wanted to add to that. So in addition to what Teni and Ochuko said, I think definitely balancing education out with their passion. They're already in school, so basically still contribute and fuel that passion. So encourage things like extracurricular activities, and then obviously being the parent and being well connected, obviously more than they are, seek out people like previously mentioned, seek out people that are already in those industries, try and connect them, try and sort out or influence some kind of mentorship system. For example, again, talking from personal experience, one of the reasons why I initially wanted to be a chef was because I used to spend summers with my auntie who had a catering company. So things like that. So basically, you can also balance out the structure of discipline. So basically, you have good grades while you're in school, and then this summer you can go to culinary school and that sort of thing. And basically, what that eventually will lead to, like Ochuko I think mentioned, is being that disciplined, okay? Like when you actually do get into a system of higher education, you can actually position yourself where you can be applying to go to school as a chef and actually come out more informed, and then now be working or seeking jobs in hospitality and management of a Michelin star restaurant. Doesn't necessarily have to be, okay, fine, because they say they want to be a chef, doesn't mean there's going to be, and that's where they're going to end up. So it's all these various industries that are happening now that are non-traditional. Everybody's basically learning more about them, and then getting more exposure about these industries because of, I guess, the internet as well. So definitely encourage and, yeah, basically just add fuel to their passion. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I mean, thanks for sharing that, right? And again, I think that there's a couple of things that are really coming up for me here as I'm listening to you all, right? I think the first thing here, right, is that, hey, school is in fact important, right? No matter what, you know, what that discipline looks like. You know, I think that the big thing that school is really giving you here is that critical thinking, right? Even a traditional role, right, might give you some of that, right? Teni, you talked about how you benefited from that 5 to 6 months in an oil company, right? So again, giving you that structure. And that brings you to this idea of discipline, right? So the discipline of working in 9 to 5 is easy because you know you're supposed to be work at 9 and then you leave at 5, right? You know what you're going to do. You're expecting that, right? But in a creative field, Ochuko, you mentioned that, hey, this is about self-drive, right? When I wake up, you know, no one's going to say, Ochuko, this is the film you're going to make, right? Teni, this is the song you're going to make. Yasser, this is what you're going to paint today, right? You know, there's a lot of self-drive and a lot of your own inspiration, right, that you need to draw from that. So actually, I might even argue, right, that it's potentially a bit more challenging to chart your own path, right? So again, it's not an easy choice and it's not an easy thing to do, to be in a broader creative field that has sort of less sort of structured progression, less structured titles. So again, really, really important for folks to recognize the hard work that goes into it, the discipline that's involved, the self-drive, and of course, understanding that there are some foundational elements that are really important for us, such as school, right? Even if what I'm studying may not turn out to be, what I end up doing, right? Listen, I studied photography, like that was one of my A-levels. I definitely didn't tell my parents that I was gonna do that. I told them afterwards, right? But now I'm a consultant. So like, what do you want me to do, right? Like, so, again, it's just really just about thinking about trying those things out. Okay, so, as you sort of think through that, right, there's one thing I want to just sort of ask you all now, right? So we've talked about, some of the challenges inherent in choosing a different path. We've talked about, hey, what do we need? Thinking about mentors, thinking about things in the environment that would inspire us, right? Yasser, you talked about your aunt. Arie, you talked about a conversation you had. You know what I mean? Benedict, you talked about your mother, right? So we've talked about all those sort of infrastructure, the influences that we had. We talked about some of the resources that we had around us in order to move forward. But now actually just want to think about, how does it feel, we've talked about the trials and tribulations. Teni, you talked about, that was a low point for me. That was a low point for me, but what's the reward, right? How does it feel now? What does this actually look like for you all as you sit here as, let's say successful folks, successful young men? What's the rewarding about having chosen this path that you've chosen, right? And then importantly, what is the broader impact of choosing a creative path, right? On society at large, right? So again, two questions here is, one, what's rewarding about having gone down this path? And then two, what is the broader impact on society when more and more people choose these different non-traditional career paths? Arie, I'm going to call you in, mate, because I've been seeing your hand near that mute button for a long time. So it's that time.
Yeah, that's a really tough question to answer. I think that I think my industry, or at least the sector in the film industry that we occupy currently is still very nascent, and I can talk about the types of things that I hope it does. Whether it's create job opportunities or improve infrastructure in some way, shape, or form. There's so much logistics involved in making films. And I can talk about what I hope it will do. But like I'll turn, for example, to like what Teni is doing and what's happening in his industry. I mean, like growing up, especially when my period abroad, there were just no, like, my culture just didn't figure in the mainstream, and over the last, I don't know, maybe like 15 years, seeing people like DRB or Davido or Burna Boy and all these guys, I think has really changed the experience of Africans in the diaspora. I think like I think that's like a really great example of what being as determined as people like Teni were. One of the huge benefits of having people pursue their interests, those interests that are not the quote unquote traditional careers. I don't think that's something that anyone could have foreseen. I don't think anyone could have foreseen that Afrobeats and the music industry in Nigeria at large would have, I don't know, gone on to make Nigerian football shirts sell out in, I don't know, how many minutes in Nike Town in Oxford Street. It's really, there's a certain amount of visibility that I think cultural pursuits give people, and an inherent identity. When I was growing up, like a lot of my friends, they didn't, especially in the UK, they didn't use their Nigerian names. You know what I mean? Like, it was it wasn't cool to be African. But I mean, these guys have created a very like a burgeoning industry. You're getting like the alter kind of guys now as well. So there's sort of like there's the mainstream and there's the off mainstream. Do you know what I mean? And jobs are being created. Concerts are happening. Like I did not have those options when I was growing up. And you know, I would love for film to do something similar. You know, I would love for film to mean that people that are Nigerians, for example, that are in the UK, that manage to find their way into drama school or wherever it is, don't have to be stuck in the industry there, auditioning for the role of the help in Pride and Prejudice or whatever it is, you know what I mean, or Downton Abbey. You know, you can come to Nigeria and you can be anything. You can be a lawyer. You can be on screen. I probably shouldn't have used that example, but yeah, I think that's the hope. That's the hope for me, and I think that's the reward. It's like, you know, culture is like, it's a reflection of us, is a reflection of ourselves, and it's an understanding of ourselves, gives us a deep understanding of ourselves. And I think that's what we do. Even in food, when I was growing up, you know, Ikoyi, that restaurant in the middle of central London, that wasn't something you would have ever dreamt of seeing. And then there'll be so many other things that I'm not even thinking of now, but I think ultimately that's what it is that it just benefits the society at large to have people that are exploring this ideas of identity and creative pursuits.
I'll add to answer the first question. How does it feel? I mean, it's, for me personally, it's the most rewarding thing to the job I do. I love it. So, you know, Monday is my favorite day of the week. It's like, it's yeah, I love it. But to build a bit on what Arie says, I think what people neglect is that history is actually housed in culture, because it becomes accessible. I know what life was like in 17th century Russia because of Dostoevsky's novels. I know what life was like in post-war Italy because of Rossellini's films. That's what culture does. It makes history accessible. Same thing with paintings. I can go and look at Caravaggio's paintings. I can go to the Sistine Chapel, and that gives you an idea of what life was like. Culture makes history accessible. And when a culture, like using this example with Nigeria, Nigeria has been so underrepresented culturally. And that's why things like the Afrobeat movement, the arts movement, the literature movement, all these things become very, very important. You know, I know what life was. I know what a traditional Igbo life in a traditional Igbo village was like because of Chinua Achebe's novels, and I think that's something that's deeply neglected, is that culture and cultural pursuits, arts, creative pursuits, preserve and make accessible history.
Right. Well, thanks, Chuko, giving us Dostoevsky and Caravaggio. All right. So actually, I wanna go to you, Teni, for a second, because I know that a couple of things that Arie brought up, right? You're sort of heavily involved in, right? With Native Mag, of course, with the World Cup jersey coming out, like, you know, big part in that as well, right? So, you know, we'd just love to just hear from you, like what that feels like, that rewarding. And actually earlier on in this conversation, you talked about, hey, I really want to make sure that I'm charting a path that people can actually follow, people can be inspired by. And I would just love to hear sort of your perspective of how that feels, right? And what that impact that you think is having on the broader society, you know, especially with the music, with the sort of the culture, with the organizing of different sort of musical agendas, right?
Yeah. I think it's definitely a good feeling, but the most important thing is, you know, how those things are communicated to, you know, to the future generations, because you know, a lot of those things, yeah, like a handful of us will know that, okay, yeah, you know, there were some key Nigerians that were integral part of, you know, making that happen. But the grand scheme of things is that it still just looks like, yeah, Nike sold out jerseys. No one really, not the masses don't really know the backstory behind it, like who were the key players behind it. So that's a narrative that's the important thing about stuff like Native, because we use that platform to champion, you know, Africans or Black people all over the world who would not necessarily get the recognition they deserve. So I feel like that was something that was always a key thing for me. I was like, we come from a place where they don't really care about you until you are a millionaire or you're a superstar. Everyone in between, the journey in between getting there and getting to the top, no one really cares. So that's kind of how, you know, we managed to, you know, pinpoint that, okay, we knew Burna Boy, we're from Nigeria, we knew that this Burna Boy is phenomenal. This boy has a chance to be one of the biggest African artists we've seen in the generation. He was the first person we put on our magazine cover. A year later, Ye comes out and, you know, that happens. So that was always, you know, being so close to the ground and always associating things that we knew would potentially affect the world in a different way, but from our own view, from our own landscape, from where we're from. Because what I always knew is, every time when I travel or I'm in the abroad or whatever, I always knew that, man, the only thing that will make me stand out or make these people see what I do has value is me being as Nigerian as possible. Whether it was funny to them or whether it wasn't cool or whether they were like, oh, this is actually cool. These African guys are really weird. But I knew that owning that was what was going to set me apart from, you know, just the masses and everyone else that was doing it. And, you know, like you said, you were saying a lot of things about culture, yeah. And what is important about that is timing. You know, no one knows what timing can do. So it could have happened for D'banj. D'banj could have ended up being one of the, oh God, can we even talk about D'banj right now? Anyway, yeah, it could have happened for, you know, in D'banj's generation, those guys linked up with Kanye West and stuff like that. But, you know, it didn't necessarily take them to the next level. But now that the spotlight is on Nigeria and you know, it's not even just because, the spotlight is not just on Nigeria because of the music and the culture. It's also because of the, you know, the beliefs that, oh, in 2050, it's going to be the third largest country in the world. All those things that add up in from different aspects of life is like what makes Nigeria extra interesting. And, you know, like the iTunes, the Spotifys, all those guys seeing the potential that the Nigerian market has also kind of helped amplify everything that's going on. And, you know, we're just there at perfect timing and the combination of like just really focusing on what I felt we needed as a community. And yeah, that's kind of what happened. Can you repeat the question again? I kind of went off track for a second.
Oh, you're good, mate. You're good. I mean, I think really what I'm taking out of that is, you know, yeah, great. It is a proud thing to sort of be associated with that and to sort of follow that path, right? But also timing is really important here, right? Timing is really important, right? It's not as if you do it and it always happens. But as part of that, and probably the most fundamental thing that I think that you shared there for me was uplifting your own culture, right? That's very important. So there's I think that there have been times where, and I think, you know, artists from across the world have done this, right? Whether it's Nigerian artists or British artists or whatever it is, mimicking the American artists, right? Yeah. Actually, what we see now is that, you know, Drake is out here with Wizkid, right? Do you know what I mean? Like that and actually trying to enter those vibes. Drake released a freestyle yesterday and he was speaking with an accent, right? And yeah. It's one of those things where it's just like, we have great depth in culture. The creative field actually opens that up, influenced by our culture, and actually projects that out to the world, which actually changes the narrative in terms of how we're seen and how we're portrayed, right? And again, fosters a great, thriving environment within our own country as well, right? So not only is that relevant for the diaspora, but it's also relevant at home, right? So again, really important. So thanks for sharing that. And Benedict, I want to pull you in here because I know when we spoke, you know, we spoke a little bit about what it means to bring different types of cooking in Nigeria. You know, I know that you work a lot with Nigerian ingredients, but you're sort of translating them in a sort of different way. And I would just love to hear sort of a little bit about, you know, one, you know, what the reward is like from being able to do that. And of course, two, you know, what hope you have, what you hope you have in terms of impacting the broader society with the creativeness and the example that you're setting.
Ooh. Well, it's tough, man. I think let's just start by saying that it's extremely rewarding, but it's tough. You know, a lot of things that we're trying to do, we are pioneers. But what I do love about this, I think when we're talking, I was telling you that I feel that we're currently in the middle of what you could define as a Nigerian Renaissance. Generally, all over, there's an interest in trying to blend our culture into any form of arts or tech. And it's given so much more edge to everything that's being done, you know, made things a lot more interesting. In a way, I think it's also made things even more relatable for a broader audience, you know what I mean? To be honest, my hope is that by doing this, we give people a lot more confidence, and also just show the importance of actually putting in the infrastructure to allow these things to be more easily accessible, to allow things to be a bit smoother. Because, you know, I don't know, can I actually talk about this? Because I was saying like even just general like supply for myself, the depth at which I've had to like work with farmers and have to work with like, you know, like I've had to like run around with my phone to like various markets in Nigeria. In fact, I think one time I actually ended up in a poacher's den, you know. But the thing is that like if you now manage to like if people see us doing this, the way we'll affect everything is on all sides. A lot more businesses will be created by it. At least that's my hope. Because, for example, now, if you want chicken, if I want corn-fed chicken, I basically have to go meet a farmer, tell him, listen, feed your chicken corn, I'll pay you so, this, that. Me and you will arrange this. But the truth is that other people might see this, they might experience it, now think, oh, you know what, this actually makes sense. And then you've now created an entire new business, or like you created a new demand, you know? So yeah, that's my hope, is just that we are, you know, through what we're doing now, we're opening the gates to like just new business avenues and just generally showing people that there's a possibility to really, there is actually a fulfillment in what you decide to do, no matter, even if it's not exactly what your parents want. But yeah, just stick to it. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Yes, I want to pull you in. Before I wrap us up here, I want to pull you in just a quick share in terms of, you know, how you feel in terms of what that reward looks like, of course. And again, your hopes for the field broadly, based on, you know, what you and everyone else on this panel is sort of trying to bring to the culture, the dynamic, and the sort of the forefront of society right now.
Okay. For sure, it's definitely rewarding. I love what I do every day. The fact that I get to connect with different people from various fields, classes of society, and especially connecting to what Dr. Ochuko Esiri mentioned about culture. I just think you should just run this whole panel by yourself now, to be honest. Like, I have nothing else to say. But in all honesty, contributing to that is, well, at a point in time now, more so ever, like I've seen memes where people are talking about, look, when children in history class later on, like 2020, that chapter is going to be thick and they're going to have a lot to learn. So thinking about that from the perspective of whatever we're doing now as creatives is actually going to be a huge contribution to history and society. And I personally, apart from the fact that what I do is very rewarding, I mean, there are definitely times where I feel like I'm at the lowest of the low, or like I have a creative block. And I mean, like, I can't do everything right. I can't always be perfect all the time. It's not everything that I make that will sell, or not every idea that I have that people will click into it and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, when I do come up with something that I think it's just personal to me, and then it connects or resonates with someone else that I never would have expected to understand or fully grasp, like the emotions that went into creating something, but then it surpasses that. It's I can't actually fathom it. So I can connect it to how, like, let's say TeeZee as a musician, like, you never think we find songs that you make will touch someone in the way that they do, or like the films that you create. or change someone else's perspective, or even as a chef, like not everything that you make will end up tasting good, but then sometimes like you have people that will literally order the same thing day in, day out. So in terms of talking about creativity across board, is unimaginable. I mean, I personally create work that's also based on satire. So as a kid, I liked watching cartoons, but then when I try and put it into perspective for myself, for other people, I'm like, the cartoons I was watching were all predominantly Caucasian characters, were the black ones. So now that I'm older, I'm like, okay, I like hiding behind my art. So I'm doing things like creating like a black Richie Rich character, and then to put it even more into context, I've called him Ubina Rich. Do you see what I'm saying? Or for example, I don't like painting on blank canvases. I like painting on something that is already has the textures. I think I personally suffer from, or everyone has, all creators suffer from self-censorship. So even if you're writing something, you think, okay, fine, what do I start the sentence with? So that's how I think about it as well. So to cancel that out, I start my process by painting on fabric. And that fabric is actually traditional fabric from all the places that I'm from. And I said that it has to be traditional fabric, not Ankara and all that kind of stuff, because that to me is called, I call it diaspora fabric. It's not Nigerian. It is not of our culture. It was bestowed on us. So I'm using Adira, I'm using Ashoke, I'm using Akwete, that kind of thing. And then by the time people are looking at these pieces of art, they're also thinking to themselves, oh, right, we actually had this. Oh, right, like I've never seen it used in this way. Oh, I remember this, that sort of thing. I didn't know this was from this place. So apart from telling those stories on top of layers of history, I'm also trying to educate and inspire people. And hopefully that is creating some kind of impact or some shape or form, to be honest. So that's it.
Thanks a lot for sharing, guys. And before I sort of summarize our chat here, I have one last question for you all, right? And doesn't have to be a long answer at all, but I just want to ask, so what is one thing, right? You can think about your own field in particular here, right? What is one thing that you would say is critical for someone wanting to pursue this path? Like the one thing that you think this is most critical. There might be a number of things. If you want to bring in a couple, that's fine. But what is the thing that you feel is, hey, you know what? If you're going to do this, this is what you should absolutely do. Like one thing. And again, you can be specific to your field or you can be broader if you want, but just really just that one thing. And maybe, you know what? I'll let someone just jump into this. I'll let someone jump in.
Just one word, I'll say passion. Like that real, people say passion, they use passion very loosely where I'm from. Passion that that you might not see cash for like 18 months. We're still passion that like,
I said 18 months.
Bro, let me just give them the real. Anything can happen. Passion to happen faster. You could be planning something and like you guys know about like you can have set, or you could be like you're cooking, you could have a disaster, something bad can happen, and instead have the passion to like overlook that and go again and try again regardless of what happens. So I think for me, passion would be really the key word, because without that passion, what you're doing would be aimless.
Nice one. Ochuko, you're next.
I completely agree. Passion is a word that people don't quite understand what it means. Clint Eastwood didn't become a star until he was in his 40s, but he continued to act throughout the time, working other jobs, but continued to act. Like, so are you willing? So to add to that, it's dedication. This thing you are doing, are you dedicated to it? Because you need a thick skin. You're going to hear no all the time. You're going to fail. Your work is not going to be on par. You may not even be a commercial success in your lifetime. Van Gogh is the famous example, but he painted until the day he died. Same thing with writers, there are writers that write until they're like, are you dedicated to what you're doing? Because it is a lifelong process.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of those people. I agree with both of them. I mean, I was working in a seismic company in Paris for a while, and it was very, very difficult to get to work. And I was given a time frame between 9 and 10. But when I got into my first film set, which was like this prison drama, I would be on set at 5 a.m. every day, and it was easy. You know, it was like it was just so easy because I wanted to be there. But I think the one thing I would say, especially if I'm thinking of our environment, is to have the understanding that there is no difference between a non-professional, quote unquote, non-professional career and a professional one. And I think that it's very important to stand your ground if you're going to be doing something that is not the lawyer, doctor, engineer that we're sort of told back home. You need to commit, and I think you need to stand your ground. There's also this thinking back home that if you are going to go into something that is not a traditional career, you have to excel. You have to be you have to be the best of the best. But again, if you sit and think about people that are in traditional careers, it's fine for you to be a lawyer in a law firm all your life and never, cut a big case or whatever it is, And I think that you also you have to be, you have to go into your non-professional, non-traditional career with the same attitude that you're just gonna be doing something that you love and you're gonna, I don't know, give it your best, I suppose. My mom, when I first decided that I was going to be an artist, my mom said something like, "Oh, you can be whatever you want. You can be a carpenter, but just be a Chippendale." And that put a lot of pressure on me. If I could have thought that, oh man, okay, maybe if I'm not going to be Steven Spielberg, whoever it is, I should probably consider doing something else. But it's fine, She's a lawyer. What I should have said to her was just like, oh yeah, but you're a lawyer, not Johnny Cochran. But you're a spy,
Wow.
But it's true. I think as an artist, this is something that I feel like we get a lot of the time. I think as a musician, you're just like, oh, you're a musician. What band are you in? What singles have you released? Anything I've heard of? I get that a lot as a filmmaker. Oh, have you made any movies I've heard of? And they want you to say, oh yeah, I directed episode 4 of Game of Thrones. But I mean, no, I didn't. I don't go to lawyers and say, what, I don't, you won't go to a lawyer and say, what cases have you done that I've heard of? Or I don't know, whoever, an architect. Well, have you built any buildings that I know of? Any mergers or acquisitions that, I might have seen in the papers? I mean, it doesn't happen. And I think
Arie, preach, mate, preach.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you got to stand your ground. You got to stand your ground. You got to understand that what you do is just as important as anyone else, and you can't put that pressure on yourself that exists in our society. Whereas, okay, if I'm going to do a non-traditional career, I've got to be the best. You don't. You just have to enjoy it, and as these guys said, be passionate about it and dedicate yourself to it.
It's like you and your twin brother. You guys are doctors or something. Philosophical.
I don't know, man.
Life and times of a creative. All right, so Yasser, Benedict, anything? What's that thing that you would say?
Yeah, I was going to say that you need, I don't know if this is the best way to describe it, you need a certain amount of resilience, because the thing is, first of all, I can say that in Lagos, everything is more or less against you. You know how they say everything in Australia is going to try and kill you. Everything in Lagos is trying to scam you, and it's just, everything is just made to be difficult. Things that should just be straightforward are just quarter straightforward, So you do need some resilience. And everybody always looks at the external factors, but as a creative, one of the biggest problems that we go through is self-doubt. There's always a constant questioning of everything that you do. In a way, you're never really, as much as we all said that we're satisfied, I can say that everybody here, when you put out what your best work was at the moment, you do always still try and look for, is there small improvements? Did everybody like it? Was this my best work? Am I sure I could have done this better? Am I going to be able to do something better than this? So, you know, you do need that sort of like resilience and stuff, because you have to be convinced that what you're doing is right. You have to, because there is no space to second guess yourself. Because the moment you do, both what you're doing and your business crumble. You know, so I think, yeah, resilience is probably the best thing. It's probably something I'd say is very important.
Can I just a very, that sort of tie it to the point of the foundation is, and exactly what Benedict is saying about resilience, is particularly as a man in a patriarchal society, because there's an expectation, right, that you're going to provide X, Y, and Z, and some of the parts you choose may not necessarily permit that. But what Benedict is speaking about, this resilience, is I think it's a really important thing, because you're going to be pushed on the external, and that's going to push you on the inside. And I think, you know, good societies, good men are confident in themselves, and that's part of what being a non-traditional what a non-traditional worker means. It means having that faith, confidence, and ability in yourself to do whatever it is you're pursuing.
Yeah, so let me just invite you in. Let me invite you in. Yeah.
Okay. I guess everyone's pretty much touched on all the main points, but I guess the only thing I could say to kind of sum it up, well, actually, can you guys all hear me? Like, just put your hand up. I'm going to ask you a question, right? So, which one of you, you know dodo, so who likes dodo as in plantain? We all do. And this is like an analogy I got from an artist friend of mine, Ayebola Kikereko. So basically, we all like dodo. It is simple, fried plantain. That's all it is. A lot of people like it, a lot of people don't. But then it's not anything but what it is on the plate. And that's what I'm trying to like tap on. You are yourself. So just basically be authentic. And then that authenticity will literally draw in your crowd, whether it's about self-doubt, whether it's about passion, whether it's about dedication or resilience. Is like literally just be yourself. Like, dodo is not being anything else than what it actually is. And it is as successful as it is right now. Do you know what I'm saying? So literally just be your true authentic self. You got to where you are now by doing that. Don't try and be anything else or any other person. So that is it. Be like dodo.
I can see in the chat a couple of people are getting hungry, man. Somebody just said I like dodo. So all right. So, you know, want to wrap us up here. You know, I just want to thank everyone, you know, for being here on the panel today, right? You know, what's interesting here is that, you know, the words that you've sort of shared in closing are very powerful, right? So we have dedication, we have passion, we have resilience, we have confidence, right? And so these are really strong words, and actually, you know, describe the character that it actually takes in order to pursue, to persevere, and to achieve in that way, right? You know, today what we've really learned from you all here is that, hey, creativity fosters culture, right? Culture changes the narrative, right? A changed narrative influences people, right? School is important, but the important thing to think about it is critical thinking, right? It helps me understand and question things. In questioning things, that's, you know, in a creative field, we're going to need to push back against people who are questioning us, right? So again, really important that you can think critically and actually fight that battle for your own self, right? Success can also be defined by the individual, right? We don't always have to think about, hey, this person is successful, so I have to be like them. I have to have 6 cars. I have to have this house. Success can be me achieving my own goals, right? Success can be setting those milestones for myself and thinking through what that looks like. And as part of this, success can also be really thinking about what it means to follow my purpose, right? Accomplish and follow that purpose, right? But fundamentally, you know, one big thing that I also want to take away from this is it's not easy. It is not easy. You know, every single one of you have talked about some of the challenges inherent. And we're not talking about challenges that happened like, hey, you know, I was at work yesterday and I asked for promotion and they said no. We're talking about the challenges that started when you were a child, you know? That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about roadblocks. We're talking about fighting through that, fighting through doubt, building the confidence that will enable you to persevere, right? And be resilient and be dedicated, right? And another thing is that this is not a joke, right? We talk about traditional roles and, hey, a 9 to 5 and you've got to do all this work. But we also talked about non-traditional creative roles, which actually say, you've got to be self-driven, you know? I used to work in a bank. I go to work and I know every day I'm working on an Excel sheet and I'm trying to get some debt facilities to people so that they can build offices and apartment blocks, right? That's what I used to do. But I know that every day I go into work, that's what I was going to do. When you all wake up, right, you're thinking, what's the canvas that I need to paint on, right? What's going to inspire me today to write this song? What inspiration can I get to create a film, right? So again, thinking about that, I'm going to the market. What ingredients am I going to use to transform a traditional Italian dish with a Nigerian twist, right? What are all those things, right? So again, it's dedication, it's hard work, it's not easy. And so again, really wanting to share with everyone that, you know, this idea of traditional and non-traditional careers, maybe we should really pull back from that, right? Work is work. Work is hard. But actually, from my perspective, of course, I used to live with Ochuko, and, you know, one thing that I always used to sort of recognize was like, you know, wow, this guy's really enjoying this. You know, this guy's really enjoying this. I wake up every day, I go to work, I like it. Sure. Do I love it? Maybe not. Right? So again, like even seeing the dedication, I've seen it, right? Live, right? And it's something that really inspires me. And of course, I hope that it inspires folks who are listening right now, and hope that message can get across, right? It is important for us to bring that culture to the forefront, and creativity is a huge, huge part of what that looks like. So with that, I want to shut it down. I want to say thank you all. Really appreciate all of you, really appreciate your insights. And we'll see you soon. We'll see you soon. So thank you very much, all right?
Pleasure, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Remarks.